activity around elements such as career planning, PDPs, focusing very only on PGRs for the moment, looking at the tools used in different institutions, and looking at the PGR community's value of this process and support. Last year at this conference, we reported on a pilot survey. We now have a second survey open, and I would encourage you, please, go to this and tell us what's happening in your institution. If you can encourage somebody who's got all the information from your institution to complete, that would be great. But we'll take any information you have, so please go to that and tell us what your view of PDP support for PGRs is in your university. Once we get that data, these are initial findings so far. Elements for processes for supporting PDP is very varied. Lots of different HIs are using the VTI RDF, but other institutions have got their own frameworks in place that they've developed. Some institutions are PDP is compulsory and others it's not. And engagement is measured through a wide variety of elements such as online tools and the PDP reports for those words built into the process. So this work is ongoing. If you're interested in this, please come and talk to us. With regard to PGT Identity Expectations, this is very much focusing at the moment on whether or not HEIs are aligned with PGT needs, very much on a program level and around community building. Again, we did an initial pilot which had 79 responses. There's a lovely infographic there which I don't have time to click to, but please go and have a look at that. On the basis of these initial survey, we've redesigned the survey and run it again. 380 responses. Somebody said in a workshop out there earlier, we've got 150 responses, we're doing really well. This is 380 responses across 60 HEIs. So this is very broad, and this is a very in-depth set of data to analyse. The key themes are there, I won't read them out. There's more information on each of those themes on the poster. And once the analysis is complete, we will have a report on the findings, but we're also feeding into a seminar in Lichfield in February on supporting the journey to independent learning in PGT, where some of the data will be presented. So if you're interested in this, please come along for that. And there's a good chance that there will be academic papers coming out of this. And for me personally, if we manage to create new knowledge in the peer-reviewed literature from a UKCGE working group, then that is quite an achievement. I encourage the working group to continue to work towards that. I'm going to run out of time, but in the PGR Lifecycle. So we're looking at these things, 3 different projects, one around UKCs, one around vital support, and one about post-graduate experiences. In terms of CBTs, we've identified far more CBTs in the country than we expected. The initial plan was to look at the experiences of students within CBTs and compare them to student experience outside. That work is not something we can do now because the variety and the numbers of students involved and access to the students has proved extremely difficult. But that's a piece of work I think the sector does need to do. So if anybody's doing that or thinking about doing that, please come and talk to us. Happy to share what we've already discovered, and happy to support anybody else who's trying to dig into this area. In terms of the vital support, we've got a survey again. We're going to create an e-booklet on support for the VIVA, and there will be a survey report. The survey has focused on supervisor experiences as well as student experiences. So we're going to compare and contrast that. Again, more work in progress. And finally, on the VIVA, post-VIVA experiences, there's a recommendation that's come out from the group that all HEIs provide clear information around a specific set of elements. And we have a document which is in draft at the moment, which we will be publishing, which HEIs can then adapt to their own needs and their own context. And UCD have already done this, so I'll encourage you to go and have a look at the UCD link there and see how they managed to do that. Finally, thank you very much for the work of the working group. We're doing all this work. Thank you to the UKCGE office, without whom we couldn't do any of this. And thank you to you and to everybody who's contributed to the survey we've run or helped us out along the way, because without you and your contacts with the universities, we couldn't possibly do this. If you want any more information, please come and say hello. Thank you very much.
The next group to report on will be the Postgraduate Funding Working Group, chaired by Doctorate.
Thanks for that, Rob. Hard act to follow. I have no slides. We do have a poster. I'm not going to rehearse the information that is on the poster. I'm going to use this as an opportunity to tell you what it's been like within the Postgraduate Funding Working Group, and to tell you how we think we can continue to add value and how we have added value. Because we had to do a bit of navel gazing at the beginning of the academic year. The previous academic year had seen a fair amount of work. A number of you have come to working group the seminars and workshops that we've put on. But the sands have been changing so frequently, and I have been called upon by the wonderful people in UKCGE to offer so many responses to press releases that I was kind of losing track as to what our position could possibly be, given all of the announcements coming from policymakers. So we did a little bit of work in September, this academic year just gone. Is there still purpose for us, or are we just clinging on to the tail of the tiger here? Because the funding landscape for postgraduate, both taught and research, has been changing so quickly. So we looked at our terms of reference, and actually we decided that the group of people that we had were very useful. This is one thing that UKCGE does very well indeed. So our group of people included, you can see the names on the poster, representation from students through the university, representation from funding bodies through representation from not just Russell Group but non-Russell Group universities, and from administration and professional services, and academics and professional services. It's a very useful group that allows us to see across the depth and breadth of the sector. And the two things that we found that we could definitely do, one is to keep on top of this tiger and try to report back to you sensibly what may or may not be happening, and to develop opinion and formulate proposals. And the second thing is to get you together, to talk together about how you can possibly cope in such a changing environment. We've done this throughout the year. Again, we held a workshop on PGT, specifically PGT funding, earlier this calendar year. We've also had consultations to which we've responded from BIS, from HEFCE, from the AHRC, and the general thrust, as you're all aware, is the movement from research councils, public funding to private funding, whether that be student funding or industrial sponsorship. So we have loan funding for PGT, we have loan funding for PGR, we have the AHRC saying if you want funding from research councils, you need to find 50%, or at least we're consulting on you finding 50% match funding for your CPD. It's about leveraging in non-public sector funding. I was very interested in the talk by Professor Ashwin this morning, where he said, don't allow others to dominate the discourse. And this is what we've been trying to do, is not allow others to dominate the discourse. Because something that is crept into public sector speak, policy sector speak, is this word that worries me, subsidy. And you'll see it happening here and there, peppered around various different statements. We have to fight back. So every time I see that, every time I've heard a press release which says, blah, 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 subsidy, I have responded by saying, blah, 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 investment. Trying to say, every time UKCGE welcomes the advent of loans, welcomes this announcement and this amount of funding that might be available. But I always try to use that word, recognise the investment you're making in your sector, as opposed to the subsidy that is being made by the public sector. Please, if you have anything that you want us to specifically consider, please do come and speak to me. The focus for the next year is on our poster, and I'm not going to read it, we've also got a timeline and the names of all of the funding group people. Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to start by thanking everybody on that group for continually providing some stimulating discussion and ideas. As with the other groups, what we're doing, what we have done, what we're planning to do this coming year is on our poster. But unlike Gavin, I'm going to just use it as a prompt for certain comments that I want to make. So I think it's quite a difficult title that we chose, Quality and Reputation of the UK Doctorate, because it could include so many things. And naively when we started, we thought we would tackle stuff like, is a doctorate in this subject the same at institution A as it is in institution B? And I think in the last year we've realised that that's a completely slippery slope, and that if we're talking about reputation, what we need to do is look for common ground and not try and differentiate between institutions. And we also thought when we started that assessment of the doctorate was very germane to quality and standards and maintaining them. So we embarked on a longer term project to find out how doctoral assessment in the UK compares with other countries. And so we've got a little publication which is the result of some interviews that we conducted at last year's International Conference on Developments in Doctoral Education and Training. And there's some copies of this over there if you're interested. It's called A Comparative Study of Doctoral Assessment, the United States, Germany, the Netherlands, and Japan. And it was a really interesting project, and I hope that those of you who choose to have a read of this electronically as well will find that it's actually quite reassuring about some of the things that we do in the UK in doctoral assessment, but it also raises some really interesting issues that we ought to be considering. Now, we have, I'm very pleased to say that we have a European person on our working group. We have Thomas Jorgensen from the EUA. He's just giving up being head of the Council for Doctoral Education, but I'm really pleased that he's staying on in our group. And Thomas has been very helpful in giving us advice as we have progressed our work. And we said, well, we've got this information, Thomas, and should we get it out in publication, or do you think we should wait until we've got stuff from other countries and maybe look at other forms of doctorates? And he said, no, get it out there, because it's raising some issues. For example, in 2 of the countries that we cover here, the supervisor is allowed to be part of the assessment team, which I don't think we've done in the UK for quite some time. So, but other things that we could consider doing, so whether or not the candidate makes some kind of presentation at the beginning of the file, etc. So I hope you'll find that interesting. What we're going to do next year, in the coming year, as you're probably aware, HEFCE funded a project that produced a report on professional doctorates in the UK, CRAC, and there were 3 authors, a principal author from CRAC. And we discussed this in our group and at the executive, and we thought that whilst it's a very useful report and it's good to have all that information in the public domain, some of the statements that were made and some of the data that were in the report could easily have applied to other forms of doctorate, not just the professional doctorate. So our group is looking at producing a statement which builds on the work of other organisations like the Quality Assurance Agency, HEFCE, others, to try and present, and this is in the context of the quality and reputation of the UK doctorate without differentiating between them too much, that looks at what you can expect from somebody who's been awarded a doctorate in the UK. And we've just had a meeting where we agreed that we would develop some case studies around doctoral candidates, doctoral graduates, and members of the working group in different contexts and in different subjects are going to provide some brief case studies. And actually, we'd be very interested if anybody else wanted to produce one too. So it's particularly looking at differences across subjects, because a couple of years ago I did some research for HEFKI with my supervisor, and I was really struck by something that one of our Australian respondents said, which was basically what subject you study in your doctorate, as with any degree in higher education, is going to affect the skills that you end up with afterwards. You know, if you're doing a PhD in maths, you will have numeracy skills that somebody who's doing a PhD in education will not. So that's one of the things we want to get at. What are the common skills that you might expect of a doctoral graduate? Now, you're all looking a bit serious, and it's quite a difficult thing to do, but we think it's worthwhile. And so we're going back to other documents as well that have been published in the last 10 years or so, which include a paper that 4 of us put together about doctorate about 5 or 6 years ago. And it's quite a slippery concept, but we think it's worth trying to identify some attributes, characteristics, qualities that we think if you've done a doctorate of any kind you would come up with. So that's something that will be coming out sometime in this year. Okay, I think that's probably it from us for now. If you're particularly interested in our work, or you like the opportunity to produce a very short case study, like 2/3 of an A4 page, talking in old money, that would be really nice, and we'd be pleased to hear from you. Okay, thank you very much.
And the final group is the Diversity and Sustainability of Organisational Structures for Doctoral Provision group, which is a bit of a mouthful, but is chaired by Rebecca Smith-McLeod.
Good afternoon. Like at least 2 other colleagues, I haven't prepared any slides either, so it will be a whistle-stop tour of what we've been doing in this group. Thanks to Angus for reminding me of the name of the group. I was frantically searching through emails before I came up here to actually find out what its official title was. We call ourselves the Structures Group. So last year, the group published a publication called Structural Changes in Doctoral Education in the UK, which is a bit of a tome. It's on the VTI desk over there, and there's still some copies available if you want to take a copy of that. It was basically a review of policy and then an analysis of a national survey looking at developments of different structures, doctoral, colleges, taking places for graduate schools changing levels of organisation to move from institutional level perhaps to faculty level, and then the rise of doctoral training programmes in all their many acronym forms. So do have a look at that. So the Structures Group reconvened in a reinvigorated form, and we are now a much bigger group than we were before. So we have representation from Stirling, Bradford, Lancaster, UEA, Birmingham, Dublin, Durham, Worcester and Gloucester, and myself from Coventry. And we had a lively and productive sort of kick-off meeting in Birmingham. We identified 3 strands of activity. So we went with Rob Daly's 3 subgroup model. Tessa Parks from Stirling is running one of the subgroups, which is looking at how doctoral training programmes or structures to support doctoral training work effectively or otherwise with external stakeholders. Tessa is Deputy Director of the ESRC DTC up there, and she has a lot of experience and background and understanding in that particular relationship. And she's leading on developing sterlings on the main line or otherwise. So you'd be very welcome to join us at that event. I think it's in the UKCGE events programme for the coming year. Another of the strands is being led by Nick Watman from the UBA, and it's looking at supervisors as partners in doctoral education structures. So what the cohort-based model means for supervision and how supervisors are supported to understand that and to participate in the development of perhaps different models for supervision, the many-to-many model, which is sometimes associated with cohort-based doctoral training programs. And Nick tells me that that subgroup is developing a survey which will come out sometime in the autumn, looking at what the activity is, trends are around supervisor training specifically for cohort-based doctorates. And then the third strand is around really international partnerships and what that might mean, the complexities and the opportunities of international partnerships in cohort-based doctoral training. And there'll be a series of case studies which are sort of in development at the moment, and that will come out in the new year. So the next meeting when we all come back together is July 21st, and we'll be looking at really ensuring that we deliver on those three things. So the event, the survey, the analysis of the survey looking at supervisors, and then also the publication, which is a collection of international case studies. So thanks go to the working group members for their hard work and for the council for its support. If you are at all interested in diversity and sustainability of organisational structures for doctoral provision, I just heard again, then do come and find me, we'll have a chat. I'd be delighted to hear from you and share your thoughts. Thank you.
Should give you the opportunity to ask us any questions or make any comments you would like to, since we're working on your behalf. Is there anything that anybody's unhappy with, anything you'd like to suggest we do? Are you broadly okay about what we're doing? Any questions to any of the groups? Anybody got a burning desire to be on a group who hasn't got on to one? So we did have some opportunities this year. So you're happy then, are you? Okay.